Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Please Welcome, Heroic Productions series of in person and virtual events where we explore people and topics of interest to our wide audience of meetings and events professionals. Heroic Productions is a corporate event production company. We have been helping our clients execute world class meetings, events, conferences, shows for the past 20 plus years, and we are true event production professionals. This series, please welcome. We launched this in August of 2022. Many have been to our in person events here at Studio 15, and many tune in to our virtual installments. Our conversation today is actually a follow up to the Marketers Community event that we hosted here in Studio 15 last week. Along with a studio audience of 120 marketers, we enjoyed a panel discussion led by Tim Brunelle. Panelists included Mona Ascalani, Gary O'Harrison, and Heather Boschke. And the topic was unleashing the power of AI, which is a super, super interesting topic, and certainly one that has us all on the edge of our seats as we learn about it, experiment with it, and simply navigate this AI world that is quickly emerging and quickly changing all at the same time. As the panel discussion event was coming together, we knew that the topic would make a really good virtual please welcome as well. So we invited Laura King, Marketers Community founder, and the events moderator, Tim Brunelle, to join us today for about 30 minutes or so. Due to a schedule conflict, Laura is not able to be with us today. So I am really, really excited to have a one-on-one conversation with Tim, which is always very fun and exciting. Tim is a deeply experienced marketing and creative leader with over 20 years consulting and management experience, currently teaching at MCAD, teaching the future of advertising, and also consulting for agencies and marketers on how to leverage AI generative tools. So, Tim, welcome to Please Welcome.
Kitty, thank you. Appreciate it. Fun to be here.
Always fun to be able to have a conversation with you. And thank you again for moderating the panel last week.
Oh, it's
I
great.
know that Laura was sad that she couldn't join us today, but we'll try to get her again at another time. So, on this, what I wanted to start out asking you today, because you're talking with your clients and you're talking to companies and leaders all the
Mhm.
time about AI, how surprised are you, or not surprised at all, at the buzz happening around the topic of AI?
Well, this is, let's call it kind of the third time that we as a modern society have kind of gone through a situation like this. When you think about marketing beginning back in, the 1700s with newspapers, and then all of a sudden in the 1930s and 1940s, broadcast, right, came
Hmm.
around and we shook up everything and we had to rethink how do we think about marketing and advertising now that we can have motion and acting and sound and all of that. And then 50 years later, the internet arrives, right? Once again, kind of threw the deck of cards up in the air and caused all of us to think differently about how messages and strategies are communicated. And now we have AI is here, shaking things up yet again. So
Hmm.
um, the the truth is that change is always with us. It's sort of a question of how deeply do we want to dive in and how deeply do we want to get involved in that change. And I think that, you know, AI as its sort of broader impact is asking all of us at every level in every company to get engaged to some degree. I think when the internet arrived, you didn't necessarily need to have a website. You could
Hmm.
successfully ignore, the internet if you wanted to. The same with social. There are still plenty
Sure.
of folks who aren't on social media. But AI is a little different in the sense that it's seeping into literally every nook and cranny of our lives and the way that we work together. So
Hmm.
I think it makes sense for individuals to, strengthen their curiosity and to ask questions and to dive in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point. And I love those words. It's seeping into our lives in all areas. And so I find that when the topic comes up in conversation, there are a number of people that I'll talk to that they're just like, yeah, it's not even on my radar. And so
Mhm.
they're asking very, very basic questions.
Yeah.
What the heck is it? Right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to find just a really, really succinct little statement. And
Mm.
so here's what I have here. Artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are designed to think and work like humans. AI has the ability to learn from experience, make decisions, and perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So it's pretty easy to see why some people look at this and say, hey,
Mm.
AI is going to eliminate my job.
Yeah. We are, as human beings, we are driven primarily by what could go wrong. It kept us alive, right?
Yeah.
And we've, as human beings, we've spent more time living in the caves, being, if you look at the course of human history, right? I've got a book over here, Yuval Harari's book about the history of humanity. The idea that we've lived in cities with running water and electricity and now the internet is a very short period of time.
Hmm.
As human beings, we spent more time roaming the land. So in our bones we have a predisposition towards being a little fearful of new things, and it
Hmm.
protects us and it keeps us safe. So that initial reaction that AI is going to take my job and AI is bad, um, we come by that honestly, right?
Yeah.
But I think that when you start to look into it, there are plenty of people much smarter than I who've taken the deep dive and looked into these things, and the fear is a little misfounded in the sense
Hmm.
of it's not as smart as we all would like to think that it might be.
Hmm.
Long story short, most of what's occurring, it's the trouble around the word intelligence, right? So we get artificial created not by us. It's the idea that we attribute human intelligence to the output of an artificial intelligence, and at this point in time, it's generally speaking, you could boil it down to patterns. So the computers are able to recognize, oh, this pattern equals cat, or this pattern equals writing like Ernest Hemingway, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so then when you ask it to generate writing or generate an image, it's recombining through its tools another pattern, right?
Right.
And one of the things I was just doing a counseling session earlier today, and we were looking at ChatGPT. And ChatGPT will, hey, thanks for that question, and it throws an emoji up there, and you think to yourself, well, that's how my teenagers talk to me. You have to remember that little uh, phrase right before the actual answer was hard coded by a human being.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the machine recognizing, oh, Tim or Kitty, how wonderful, great to
Hmm.
talk with you. That's a default cut paste bit of code, right? That's meant
Right.
to make the answer feel more human. So
Right.
we have to remember that the machines are operated by human beings who are attempting to make that experience um, warmer, more receptive, less scary.
Right. Yes, that's true. Um, and it's we. So one of the things that I got into a conversation recently with someone about this, and they pointed out the fact that this tool can actually help us be even better at our jobs.
100%. Yeah.
Right. And I loved that one of the big takeaways from last week's panel discussion was that, well, and you even said we tend to look at these things, um, we can look at these things negatively when it's change and it's a little scary. But
Mhm.
there was a tremendous amount of optimism coming from the panel last week.
Yeah. I thought Gario Harrison made a great point about the ways in which he and his kids and some of the other dads in the neighborhood were using the tools to explore and to learn, and to treat ChatGPT and some of the other visual tools as a mechanism for instigating curiosity. I thought
Hmm.
that was fabulous.
Yeah.
Um, I had I'm an adjunct faculty at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. One of my students was offered a job. Hooray! She graduates, gets a job, and uh, her question was, "Well, how should I think about my first day, my first week? What advice do you have? I'm going to start my first job." And I said, "Well, why don't we jump into ChatGPT?" Or we used Bing because the information was a little bit more current. But let's do a SWOT analysis of the company that you're going to go work at, so
Mhm.
that you can walk into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, that you can
Mhm.
walk into
Mhm.
your new career, your new industry, and understand the competitive set and understand the what is threatening the industry, what's giving it courage, et cetera, et cetera. And she remarked that, first day meeting people, they're like, wow, you really know a lot about our company and the industry that we're in. It's like, yeah, right. Isn't it great that we have this sort of ever present, never tired assistant,
Mhm.
that is accessible to all of us to just help us get smarter in the moment.
Right. Yeah. 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Available at any time, and that goes back to when all of a sudden we had computers at our disposal. Same thing again for those people who looked at it and just said, oh, it's just for games.
Right.
No, it's literally like having a full library, the biggest
Yeah.
receptacle of information and resources at your fingertips, and that's
Hmm.
exactly what we have.
Right.
One of the other takeaways in the panel discussion last week was noting of a research study that had come out,
Mm.
which found that ChatGPT makes us 40% more productive
Right.
and can improve quality of work by 18%.
Yeah. So was it was that Gartner? I can't remember exactly. But the sentiment was that the tool, again, we've already sort of discussed this, but you have an omnipresent, tireless um, partner who isn't going to get frustrated with you
Mhm.
necessarily, and is going to help you think through a problem, think through an answer, and turn it sideways, turn it upside down. If you don't like the response that you got, well, hit regenerate. It'll do another
Right.
one. Or in the
Yeah.
case of Google's Bard, it automatically gives you sort of three drafts to look at when you're looking
Mhm.
at text stuff. So um, yeah, it's removed the barriers of I don't know what that term means, or I don't understand that acronym, or I don't understand what's happening here. And now we have this again, a silent, always on partner who can
Mhm.
facilitate these things at any hour of the day. And
Yeah.
so, of course, people who are using it to increase and strengthen their curiosity are going to outperform others. It's that quote,
Mhm.
AI isn't going to replace you. A human
Mhm.
being who understands AI is going to replace you.
Yes.
I think that's what that survey is
Yeah.
proving out.
Yeah. It certainly helps us get off the mark on certain projects. So you're sitting there, and maybe it was even somebody on the panel that said this, that it removes the barrier of a blank page.
100%.
I love
As
that.
a writer, one of my mentors a long, long, long time ago, I said, how do you get past the blank page? And he goes, oh, it's easy. I draw a little cartoon on the page and then it's not blank anymore. Thanks, Yoda, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you could start and that you've got this sparring partner, whether it's a visual thing or a verbal thing, who is willing to, again, engage with you and kind of play around. So it's
Yeah.
less about you having to fight the resistance to begin.
Mhm.
Um, if you want to think about like, what are all the reasons why I don't start writing or I
Mhm.
don't start creating? There are many of them. I'm thinking of The War of Art. Pressfield's book that's entirely the premise of that book. But now you have these tools which say, well, we'll put something on the page, some words, some things. They may not be accurate. They may not be a great first draft, but at least now you are an editor. I think
Mhm.
it was either David Mamet or Stephen King said half of writing is editing. And so if you have a tool that helps you get to now there's something to look at, something to react to, wow, that really frees up more people I think when you ask 100 people, hey, who's creative, or you're talking about creativity, a lot of people will say, I am not creative. No, 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 don't ask me. I think what these tools are saying is you are welcome back to the table.
Hmm.
In the sense of, we're not asking you to generate right off the cuff, but now you can react, you can edit. And that's hugely empowering
Yeah.
to a lot of people, especially like if you can't draw, like if someone said, Tim, can you draw a fish riding a bicycle? I mean, I could. It would be. I'm not going to do that right now, but it would be. It would be legible enough that you would look at it and go, "Is that a fish riding a bicycle?" Okay, great, but it wouldn't be artistic. The nice thing is I can jump into, a Mid Journey or a Dolly 2. Prompt is fish riding a bicycle. Voila! I immediately have 4 options. So,
Hmm.
from the standpoint of facilitating a conversation, I think about trying to understand an audience or understanding a moment, and we're going to create persuasive content. In your business of creating experiences, and we want to help a client understand, well, you're going to go through a portal, and a thing is going to happen, and you can tell that, like, the words don't make sense. Well, the idea that we could jump into, well, here, and I've seen designers do this, where they will together jump into Midjourney or one of the other tools,
Hmm.
and prompt and create something. And go, is it like the one on the left or the one on the right?
Hmm.
Oh, no, no, redo the prompt, try it again. So, as a
Hmm.
tool for facilitation and a tool of helping discern, what does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
It's incredibly freeing.
Yeah. I want to make sure that I welcome everybody who's tuning in with us live today. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Please say hello, drop a comment. If you've got a question for Tim, drop that here as well. I do see some of the comments coming through. Hi, Brad, welcome. And see lots of little comments here. Good insights. Yeah, you certainly, this goes back to the early part of our conversation. You really can't opt out of AI anymore. And I think that there might be people who are kind of feeling like they can. And so I think that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how people end up being kind of pulled in a lot of different ways, as you said, as it seeps into our lives in all sorts of different ways.
Well, someone was just quoting here. I like books, okay?
Yep.
Thanks for quoting Rick Rubin. There's the Rick Rubin book, okay?
Okay.
This is his book is fantastic, right? So
Yeah.
dive into that.
And we'll talk a little bit more. I think as we close out today, I'm going to ask you if there are other resources that you'd like to put in front of people, or if they're looking to educate themselves. What resources would you look to? Let's talk about and
I
the
was going to jump in. There's actually a great point that
okay.
Glenn comment from, I think it's Glenn. The
Yep.
issue I see is when someone takes that starter and ends there. Well, of course, right? So that's
Yep.
true of any tool. I pick up
Hmm.
the paintbrush or I pick up the typewriter, and the first thing I do, I'm done. And we've seen this, especially in advertising. It's like, your first idea is very rarely the best idea. It's usually
Yeah.
like you're just a stereotype that you're getting out of your system. So part of the the tools are enabling more people to have more ideas. Wonderful.
Hmm.
Now, as a society, we need to train people that just because the first thing came out and it looked complete enough to solve your issue,
Hmm.
you should maybe continue. You should
Yes.
continue on with things. So,
Right.
it's an educational process for teams and organizations. As an example, my 16-year-old and 17-year-old, I have them utilize ChatGPT for, we've talked about, ha ha ha, Dad, we're using this to write our homework. I'm like, fine, but we're going to have a conversation around it. We're going to go vet facts if you're making claims
Hmm.
and things like that. But I also want to have a conversation around, why do you, is this phrase that was generated by ChatGPT doesn't seem to be in your voice? Why would I say that?
Mm.
Right? So using it to facilitate a conversation. So I'm all with Glenn's comment here, and I feel like part of our job is, as humans, is to say, yes, it's a starting point, but it's
Yeah.
not the finish line, and we have to continue to iterate and ask questions of ourselves.
Right. And that's the part that makes it better. It's the part that
Right.
makes the work better. And it needs that human
Oh yeah.
component.
Well,
Um, yeah.
I give you another quote. So at
Yeah.
the Cannes Advertising Festival this last spring, um, there's a creative, a guy named Nick Law. He was at Apple and a few other places, but he said, well, what was the quote? Mediocrity is now free, right?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, these tools are going to bring the boat up, and you're going to have tons and tons more people generating more and more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
So people who weren't creating before are now creating.
Yeah.
But that also means that for those of us who do this professionally, who write professionally, who art direct, who design professionally, the bar for our work has now gotten higher.
Yes.
Right. If anyone can kind of come in and design a logo and do whatever within these tools, fine. You need to demonstrate how your work is more insightful, more persuasive, more advantageous to your client and to your customer. Right. So
right.
it's what it's going to affect are the lazy creatives, people who are like, well, they weren't putting much effort in anyway, and they're going to get overwhelmed. But I think for the rest of us, it says, hey, let's aim for A plus content, not C plus content.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good point. We don't need to look at it as it's going to make things easier. It's going to make it easier for us to be better.
Yeah.
To be able to elevate. Hi, Jen Gilhoy. Welcome. Jen was at the event last week. Yeah, and you know what? I think you and I chatted after the panel discussion too on this topic about how it's being viewed and seeps in across generations. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Okay, so the generational thing I think is awesome and interesting, but it's also true of every change, right? So, those kids, get them off my yard. They're, whether it was rock and roll or long hair or the internet or social media, you're going to see it. Fewer people in older generations are more open for change. It's just, that's just the nature of humanity.
Human nature. Yep.
But as we've said, AI is sort of flowing into things. So maybe, I'm encouraging a curious mindset. Be as curious. I've sat down with my parents and we've talked about it. And, you get to like, that's great. I have plenty of other things to keep me amused. Son. So like, my dad's probably not going to dive into it. But that doesn't mean that we can't talk about it. Yeah. Right. I know my kids are really excited about it. And I do feel like, as we start to get into things like, okay, misinformation or deep fakes and all that kind of space and their impacts on society, we should talk about it more. And I'm glad that we're seeing, policymakers and government officials talking more and having the conversation. I think that's what we need to do. Right. So the answer to the generational divide is to talk about it and to encourage the conversation, whether it's at your schools or your churches or your social spaces, to get curious and look into all of these things.
Yeah. So as part of your curriculum in your class at MCAD, I'm assuming that there's component within your class?
Yeah. So the last time I taught this was back at January through May at MCAD. And so, ChatGPT had just come out in November. So it's like, I got to rewrite the whole curriculum. Pretty much not day one, but pretty soon after getting into, okay, what is this, and explaining it and kind of looking into it. And by the way, remember that the technology was changing literally by the hour. The students were required to use it. And I was taking my kind of direction. There's a professor at Wharton University, a guy named Ethan Mollick, who's certainly more of an expert than I am. If you really want to understand some practical applications and to get a sense of the pedagogy around AI in a classroom setting, Ethan Mollick, Mollick, Google him. He's got a great Substack called One Useful Thing. He's written some really awesome posts that go deep into like, just follow these steps in terms of prompt writing, but also to think about what impact does all of this AI, will it have on business and society and things like that. So I think Ethan Mollick is sort of my North Star in terms of doing work and thinking about these things.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question. I went down a sidebar.
That's fine. The comment that just dropped here in the comment section, I think that is
the mediocrity bubble. I love that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree. I like this comparison to return of craftsmanship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that you're gonna, You know, it's somewhat tied to, like, you go to New York City, and now you can go down the street and get an Hermes bag from someone on the street that's like
Mhm.
pretty darn good.
Mhm.
My 17-year-old bought a pair of Nike Chunky Dunkies that some guy made in, like, I don't know where. You can't buy them. They're like $2,000, and he got them for
Yeah.
150, right? So there's something about what is craft and what is craftsmanship that we're having that conversation in some areas. But I think
Mhm.
you're going to start to see as that these tools enable um, an expression in a variety of forms, whether it's design or art. You're seeing a lot of stuff on Etsy and in
Mhm.
other sales channels where it's like no one could actually build that cabinet that way. That's an AI thing. It would be impossible,
Mhm.
or really expensive.
Yeah.
So it's also asking a lot of us as viewers to be critical in our thinking. This is media literacy
Mhm.
101, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so on the one hand, that's occurring. On the other hand, I feel like people are going to say, I will now treasure work that I know is done by hand. We talked about this last week. If we're going to have a conversation around AI in our company or with our clients around how we're going to, are you using AI? Are we using AI? How are we using it? Let's have those conversations in person, right?
Uh,
Instead of in the ether, right?
yeah.
So having the conversations in person is another example of the idea of human connection and human craft. And then when we
Mhm.
go to make content, I think that we're going to increasingly recognize what I would call big C and little c creativity, which is, let's put it this way. If we're making a banner ad, we're making a direct mail piece. Honestly, is that a space in which, like, there's a lot of craft, right? No one's paid for it. I mean, like, the hey agency, make us 10 banner ads. It's no, just spell things correctly, get the logo, don't mess up the logo, hit the file size limits, but otherwise, no one's asking for like meticulous head writing and kerning and things like that. They're banner
Right.
ads. The same
Right.
is true of a lot of direct mail. It's like they're just doing ABC testing, so it's not like, that's little c stuff. And that's where AI, I think, is going to help a lot of people just move faster. It's going to help solo printers move faster,
Mhm.
churn little c landing pages and things like that. Big C stuff is the more like where I care about the craft. I want
Yeah.
I want to see a headline that's like truly provocative, and I'm willing to pay a really sharp writer to mess with that and think about it. The same with art direction, the same with design or experiences. There are
Mhm.
elements to an event, there are elements to the kinds of work that you guys do at Heroic where this is about low cost because it's disposable. But there are other parts where it's like, well, we really need the
Mhm.
best caliber, and we're
Mhm.
gonna we're gonna see a bifurcation of volume churn stuff that AI is optimizing, separated by work that I'm pretty sure that a human being did most, if not all, of that. You know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's my take on this question. But I love the idea of the mediocrity bubble.
Yeah.
Well said, LinkedIn user.
I know. Um, so these 30 minutes fly by so fast,
Right.
and we could talk forever and forever. Knowing that you consult with small companies, medium-sized companies, and large corporations,
Yeah.
they're all going to look at this differently and with
Right.
different the lens of, oh my god, we need to make sure that we do this right and we don't make mistakes, and compliance and all of that.
Right.
Words of advice on this topic, how to, from those three different
Mhm.
perspectives, how
Well,
do we take the step?
what's universal to all of them, whether you're, less than 10 people, you're a small company, you're medium size or a large company, perspective and attitude, right? And I think if you have a curious attitude, we've certainly seen plenty of companies where, all of a sudden the default is shut it all down. No, the answer is no. Legal and IT say no. I mean, come on. We're human beings. People are going to do it at home. They're going to do it on their they're
Yeah.
going to do it on their phones and things like that because they see
Mhm.
advantage for themselves and for their
Mhm.
work. So having an attitude that says we understand everybody's got questions, so let's do this together. I thought that Mona Ascalani, who's at General Mills, made a really great point about her organization. So we'll start with large, as I understood what Mona was saying.
Mhm.
they built a task force, and there was sort of a call to say like, hey, who's interested? And we need to have people from project management and supply chain and legal and IT and marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And we need to have voices, many different voices coming together to chew on and look at what this could be. Now, General Mills is a highly resourced organization. They can afford to bring in all those different perspectives. I think as companies get smaller, it's more about the attitude to say, we as a company want this to be across the organization. We want this to be a company-wide conversation. We want to hear from a bunch of different voices and perspectives, because we recognize that the answer isn't going to come from one person in one report. It's not going to be IT. Yes, there's technology in here, but there's also policy, and there's also insights and things like that. So it's the what's the story of the 12 blind people trying to describe the elephant, right? You can't have just one voice, one department mandate the definition of AI or the use case of AI, because they're limited. Their perspective is skewed by what they know, and what they and by what they don't know. And so my advice is, you want to have it be a company-wide conversation, and in part to just help everybody realize, oh, I'm a little concerned too, or I'm curious too, and find a way to broker kind of both the demystifying, but also this kind of fear removal of the tools, and then start to get into, okay, how do we all think we could take advantage of these things? How do we think our competitors are taking advantage of them? How might they benefit our partners and our clients and things like that? So, it is about a productive set of curiosity more than anything.
Yeah. Experimentation,
Mm-hmm.
this digital transformation, this emergence of AI, and this is not just a 2023 thing. This has been right. This has been evolving for a number of years. But as we think about the topic of digital transformation in general, this is another piece of it, and there is room for technology across every industry, every company, any size company. Certainly, that's always something that I find comes up a lot in conversation. Again, when people just say, yeah, but my business is this, we're different.
Yeah,
Oh,
of course you're different. Right.
right.
I kind of feel like AI, in a way, as a broad subject, is sort of the tipping point. So let me put it to you this way. If your company wants to be able to take full advantage of what Microsoft is calling its Copilot, right? Their label, their brand for things, you're going to discover that your SharePoint needs to be, let's just say, meticulous, right? Your data, all of your company data. And most people laugh uncomfortably, because they know, most companies know that their data is unstructured. It's a hot mess. It's over here, it's over there, it's disconnected. The meta tagging across everything is just a disaster. But if the allure of AI is strong enough, hey, maybe finally we will go and clean out that messy closet. We will finally invest the resources and the time and the money to go clean up our data so we can take advantage of it, right? Or let's look at things like AR and VR, right? That was last year's hot thing. But in a way, you weren't really able to take full advantage of them, in part because your data was kind of a mess, right? But also, I think what AI is going to kind of open up, the more people get curious and embrace these things, it's going to help us take advantage of all these things that we were sort of neglecting to do. Because we didn't see, it's like, oh, that's going to cost us $1 million, or 6 years, or whatever the burden was, and we could never see the benefit of it. And so the AI's arrival sort of says, hey, here's what you're going to get as a result of doing this hard work behind the scenes to clean up your data, clean up your processes, understand your broader governance, for how information is going to be treated. I think all of that is going to benefit. That hard work is going to occur in part because, well, we get all the AI goodies as a result.
Right. Yeah. Some words that I've written down over this time: curious, experimentation, creativity, exploration, team. So in this time, in this world that we live in now, where many of our team members are remote, what a wonderful thing to bring people together.
Yeah. I again, I'm a glass half full. I'm an optimist. I'm cursed with optimism. And I
That's why
feel
I
like,
love talking to you, Tim.
but I do feel like I'm not a data scientist.
Yeah.
I'm not but I do feel like if our attitude is focused towards positive benefits, how can we help each other? How can we enable each other? That can drive everybody else, right? That attitude can help steer a corporation, steer an organization, steer industries, and steer culture towards trying to benefit each other through these technologies.
Yeah.
It really does start with attitude.
Right. Wonderful. Tim, thank you.
Kitty, my pleasure. It's
Just
always fun to talk with you about these things.
just scratching the surface. Yeah, for your time, for your and sharing your experience with us. If
Yeah.
people would like to reach you for further exploration, for consulting work,
Yeah.
education, whatever, fun conversation, what's the best way to connect
Oh,
with you?
yeah. LinkedIn is super easy. You find
Okay.
me there, or timbrunelle.com, TIMBRUNELLE.com. Yeah.
Okay.
I love talking with folks about all this stuff. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Wonderful. All right. And as always, from all of us here at Heroic Productions, thank you so much for tuning in. You can reach me at khart at heroic-productions.com. Our website is heroic-productions.com as well.
Thanks, Margie.
And we will see you all soon. Thank you all for tuning in today.